Hey, so hi everyone. This is Vivian Fu, the Communication Officer of the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. In short, it is called the EAAFP. I know this is a very difficult and challenging time for everyone, but I'm still happy to see you virtually and having you sitting in for the class. So yeah, let me start my presentation. Okay, have anyone seen this scene? I cannot see your face, so I hope you have nodded your heads that you have seen such a beautiful scene with lots of water birds and in a wetland. So what are water birds and what are wetlands? So here is a very broad definition of water birds. They are actually birds that are ecologically dependent upon wetlands. And what are wetlands? By the definition of the Ramsar Convention, they are areas of marsh, fen, peatlands, or water, whether natural or artificial, permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing, fresh, brackish, or salt water, including areas of marine water with a depth of which at low tides does not exceed 6 meters. So basically, a lot of places where you see water, this can be defined as wetlands. So you understand water birds and wetlands, and let's move on to another concept. It's called migratory water birds. So because you are all in Tennessee, which is in US, I'm not so familiar with the America flyway. So I Googled and searched on the USFWS website and found that, oh, solitary sandpiper is one of the shorebird that you can see in your university, in your area. So I picked this up. As you can see in this map, it shows that in the orange area on the top, this is in the north. Some of the parts are within the Arctic region. This is the breeding ground of the solitary sandpiper. And the yellow part is the migration area of the birds. And in the blue color area, these are the range where the solitary sandpiper would winter. So I have talked a lot about breeding, migration, and winter. So let's go to this this page about the life cycle of migratory birds. I is still using solitary sandpiper as an example. As you can see during the summertime, when the solitary sandpiper is breeding, they are breeding the north. And then when autumn comes, it's becoming colder and the bird cannot find food. It's becoming too cold for the activities. So they have to move down to the south where it is warmer, lots of food, and when water is not frozen. So they have to fly all the way from the breeding ground in the Arctic northern area down to the south. And remember, this is a bird with a palm size. This is like this size. The bird is really small. They have to spend their winter in the south. After spending the winter, they are going to migrate back to the breeding ground for breeding. So this is the life cycle of a migratory bird. And you can see each year, this palm-sized bird, they have to fly twice a year to and from between north to the south. So this is really a tough and amazing journey that this little bird can make this every year, 2 times. Well, during the migration from the north to the south, I have roughly calculated it's about 12,000 km per trip that they have to go. That means they have to do like more than 20,000 km each year for a small bird like this. they are very small. So it's just like us, or when we are driving from one place to another, we need gas station. We need to refill our like the fuel for the car. And like when we are traveling from um, South Korea to the US, we also may have some stopover, during our flight. So it's same for this little bird. They need stepping stones, which is called the stopover sites. And this is really important for them to refuel the energy, for them to rest and to gain back some strength. Or sometimes they would change the feather during the at the stopover site. We call this molting. So all these stopover sites are really important gas station for them. So we understand water birds, wetlands, migration, and now it comes to the word flyway. So this is a terminology that we use, like as you know, East Asian Australasian flyway. So roughly we have 9 main flyways in the world. These are the artificial conceptual boundary of the flyways. But as you can see, these flyways overlap with each other. And because birds do not have a passport, they don't need to like get permission to go to another countries. They can just fly freely. So sometimes a bird from the US, they can appear in our flyway. And at that time, the bird watchers will go crazy with the rare birds, or the birds that won't appear in the flyway. And also some people may ask, oh, would the birds go back when they touch the boundary? No, it's just a virtual one. So the birds won't bounce back when they touch the boundary. So they will continue their journey even if it is outside. So let's say from Alaska, they will go all the way down here. They don't necessarily go along this line. Okay, so I have too much word about this line. And yeah, and this is where you are from. This is the American flyways. So there are free flyways, but it's in virtual ones. Birds can interchange from these flyways. Well, as you can see, let's take a look of this graph. It shows about the proportion of globally threatened migratory water bird species in each flyway. This is an old study, so at that time there are only 8 flyways that time. And so you can see the American flyways are doing really good. The proportion of globally threatened species are not so high as comparing to ours. That is the East Asian Australasian flyway. It's really, we need to work hard on that to protect our species, because the higher the proportion of the global threatened species of the migratory birds, that means the tougher that they have to face during the migration. And why do they have their journey is tougher than those in the American? Because there are lots of threats. Apart from the natural disaster that they will see, like they will meet, like typhoon, like natural predation. So these are natural selection, but we're talking about human induced threats like habitat loss. We have a lot of wetland loss due to reclamation, due to habitat destruction, by pollution as well. We also have illegal hunting. So this is a critically endangered species called the spoonbill sandpiper being trapped in the illegal mist nets. And also here in the bottom, you can see, oh, this is grassland. It looks good, right? But it doesn't. Shorebirds, they depend on mudflats, the tidal mudflat, which is empty land for them. They do not like mudflats with a lot of grass, because with the grass, they would change the topography of the land and may change the organism composition underneath. So the birds who rely on the benthic organism, the animals that it's underneath the mud, they rely on them as the food. But with the grass, invasive grass here, it's called the spartina. I think it's also happen. It's actually from America. These will cover the mudflats and will change the prey that they are relying on. They eat to refill their the energy. So this is not good, although it looks good. And also at the background, you can see there are a wind farm. Small shorebirds are good, okay, but for large migratory water birds such as crane or spoonbill or sometimes raptors, they are too big, too clumsy to avoid them. So sometimes they will found dead or collide on this infrastructure. So this is some threats that you can see here. As the number one threats to the migratory water birds on our flyway is wetlands loss, habitat lost. As you can see from this study, this graph shows that it's a comparison between the wetland loss, the rate of wetland loss, comparing with UK, in the US, and East Asia. The colored one with red, orange, and yellow and are the ones showing how fast we are losing the wetlands in the East Asia, in China and in Korea. But comparatively, it is still, well, there are some loss in the UK and the US, but comparatively, they are not as severe as in the East Asia. So this is our main task to tackle if we want to save our species. So somebody will ask, oh, who cares about the water birds? And yeah, and why do we care about wetlands? So here is a very brief diagram or figures showing why do we need to care about the wetlands? Well, on the left, you can see there are the wetlands provide habitats for species, for animals, especially as for migratory species. The stopover sites are really important. Every single migratory stopover site are important because the birds has the memory that they will go back to the same place every year. Well, especially for Asia, we rely a lot we have rice as our main diet. So paddy field as a kind of artificial wetlands is very important. And well, if you have studied basic biology, or if you have learned from school in primary school or in high school, that we know that wetlands helps us to protect ourselves from flood and from erosion. They also help to purify water, and also if you see reservoir, lakes, rivers, these are the main water supply that we have, and these are kind of wetlands. And if you like going to the wetlands for canoeing, for going to swim at the beach, or just go bird watching, these are the recreational service that the wetlands are providing us. So all of these we call the wetlands are providing ecosystem services. And later on, I'll tell you that we have underestimated the values of the wetlands hugely. So this is a study in 2012. They are comparing different the values by unit area of different ecosystem. So they are the ecosystem that was under study in the research was oceans, woodlands, grassland, temperate forests, rivers and lakes, tropical forests, inland wetlands, coastal systems, coastal wetlands, coral reefs. So and in the x-axis you can see that the value is it's like showing by magnitude. So Yeah, you can see that's the wetlands are actually towards the highest values among those. And among all the ecosystem, as we comparing to the other like forest, grassland, woodland, ocean is the least. Here in this graph, it shows more because this is a study about people using money terms to calculate the value of wetlands and other ecosystems. So what they have investigated is the ecosystem services or that they provide, and they calculate them in the money terms. For example, the productivity of foods like fisheries, rice production, or agriculture, aquaculture that's relying on wetlands. The money terms that we put for flood control, erosion control by purifying water to stabilize the water table. All these are kind of ecosystem services that we like government puts to manage. And also money terms that people gain money from recreational activities like sightseeing, canoeing, all these kind of things. So as you can see, we have the wetlands, the inland vegetation wetlands, coastal vegetative wetlands, and coral reefs that has the highest value in money term comparing to other ecosystem. So in the past, we always just think, oh, okay, forest is very important. Of course, they're really important. But look at this graph. We have been neglecting or underestimating the values of wetlands hugely for a long time. So yeah, so now we have to think about how can we calculate, how can we justify and protect these wetlands in order, it's not only for the wildlife, it's also for the good of the as human being. And now we understand why there is like why we should protect the wetlands because of the high value of the wetlands. And why do we care about the water birds? Because they're so far away. I don't see them every day. They are nothing to do with our life. But water birds, they are a good indicator for good and healthy wetlands. So for example, if you go to a wetlands, you see lots of birds, while comparing to a wetlands or reservoir where you see nothing. You see no life, no fish, no water birds, nothing there. Would you choose which one you would choose for getting drinking water? Of course, everyone will go to the one that have lots of birds, lots of fish. So these birds, they're really easy to observe. So they are good indicator for whether this is a good and healthy wetlands. And these good and healthy wetlands will also have good, like doing good for a human being. So for our flyway, we have identified some important sites for migratory birds, and I will come back to this point afterwards. So at this moment, have an idea of the important sites for migratory water birds. That these are the sites where people and the migratory water birds are relying on. Here I am showing one example from our flyways because it's easier for me to illustrate. We were talking about protecting migratory water birds, but let's see just one species. This is called the black-faced spoonbill. I think a lot of you have also spoonbill species in your flyway. But this one is just only in our area, and you can see its breeding site is in China, DPR Korea, and Aro Korea. And the wintering sites is in Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Cambodia. So for one species only, we have to involve 7 countries. And none of the single country alone can help to protect and conserve these species. So all of these countries have to work together to protect it. And that is why we have the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. So a brief idea of our history, it's in 2002, EAAFP was adopted in the list of the World Summit of Sustainable Development as a Type 2 initiative. Type 2 initiative means this is informal and voluntary. And we have launched the first meeting of partners in 2006. So EAAFP is a network of partners within the East Asian Australasian Flyway, with an aim to protect migratory water birds, their habitats, and the livelihood of people depending upon them. So we are not just only focusing on the birds, we also focus on the sites and also people living on that. And here it's showing the number of partners of EAAFP. Right now we have 37 partners. With our flyway, the EAF, the flyway, we have 22 countries, and now you can see 18 of them, including USA is also our partners, because Alaska is part of the EAA flyway. Are included, and we have 6 intergovernmental organizations. So these are mainly UN agency or conventions that with country partners. So we have CMS, which is Convention of Migratory Species, Convention on Wetlands, that is Ramsar Convention. FAO, we have also Convention on Biological Diversity. ACB stands for ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. ASEAN it's the entity for Southeast Asian countries. Because most of the migratory water birds breed in the north, a lot of them are even within the Arctic region. So we have the CAF, which is under the Arctic Council. They have the conservation of Arctic flora and fauna. So they are also our partners. We also have international organization, IUCN. I hope all of you have heard about this. This is a really important organization to assess all the flora and fauna, like animals and plants in the world, about their conservation status. And we also have 11 international NGOs as our partners. So maybe some of you have heard about WWF and BirdLife International, WCS. So these are also our NGO partners. And very interestingly and very unique for EAAFP, that we also have private sector as partner. So this is a really good and really special and unique partnership for among comparing to the other flyways, that we have partners from each sector, from the government, from NGOs, and also from private sector. So within this partnership, the government, the NGOs partners, and this private sector, they can sit on the same table to discuss issues relating to the conservation of migratory water birds and wetlands. So this is quite a unique framework for conservation. So moving onwards, how do EAAFP function? So we have our partners, but they are like working on different issues. At the secretariats, we only have 10 people plus 6 people from the science unit based in Beijing. So it is really a small secretariat. But how can we like work on different issues in different countries on different species? So we developed with the working groups and task forces. So as you can see in this slide, that we have 7 working groups. They are working on focusing on different taxa and different tasks. Like Anatomy working group, which is focusing on ducks and geese, crane working group, seabird working group, shorebird working groups. They are focusing on these big groups of water birds. We also have a working group on avian influenza because that's relating to wild birds and human health. We also have one for black-faced spoonbill working group. This is one of the earliest working group in our flyway. And also CPA. CPA stands for Communication, Education, Participation, and Awareness. So this working group work with other partners or others to raise the awareness and do education to different target audiences. We also have task forces, which are focusing more specifically on species or in a smaller region. So we have spoonbill sandpiper, scaly side merganser, etc. These are focusing on specific species. We also have task force on small region like the Yellow Sea ecoregion. So with the working groups and task forces, even non-partners of EAAFP can join. So a lot of time we have local NGOs, we have local expertise or academics joining these working groups, providing professional scientific information. And also the local NGOs are working more specific at the site level or in species level, would be more functional if they join these task forces. So this is how we work at the species or on different issues. And more importantly, the Flyway Site Network. So this is, I would say, the heart of the EAAFP, because we are a network or we are a platform to link with different people at different countries or different sites. So we need a network of sites. And as I said earlier, the green dots are actually the identified important site for migratory water birds. We have identified over 1,000 important sites for migratory birds. And we have identified 146. Sorry, this is not an updated figure. The most updated figure is 146 flyway network sites. So these flyway network sites, they were selected under the criteria of a Ramsar site. That means it is already meeting an international importance or level of the sites that are important for the migratory water birds, and also as a status of wetlands. And these flyway network sites were designated and nominated by the local government. That means there are some extent of government recognition of the importance of the sites because they are nominated by the governments. And to build the flyway network sites, this network is to make sure that these sites together are sustainably managed to support the survival of migratory water birds. As you can imagine, some birds, they migrate further. They have longer migratory range. Some of them, they have shorter, and they have different requirements on habitats needs. So that means with this network and to identify designating more important sites, we are going to work with the governments and the site managers to ensure these sites are in good condition for the birds. And on top of that, we have, after having this network, we also wanted to have a lot of exchange between the people from these different countries so that they can learn from each other. So we have established the sister site agreement so that two sites from different countries, they can join as a twinning program as a sister site, and they can do information exchange, they can do capacity building, they can also do all sorts of collaboration. So with this mechanism, we try to promote people to work together. Well, coming back to this slide, I would like to say, although my work is focusing on the East Asian Australasian flyway, we also work together with the other flyways. For example, we work with IWA, which is about European and African flyway. This flyway, this area, we are learning from each other about how to do better monitoring, better cooperation. We also learn from the American flyways because like you have advanced system or research methods that we can learn from. So the next slide, I would like to say, even we are in different flyways, as long as you are interested in water birds and wanted to do something on the conservation of water birds and wetlands, you can always do. And I understand that many of you may have different backgrounds. So yeah, so we need not only the scientists, we don't really only need the biologists or ecologists. We also need politicians, people who study law to pursue with the environmental law. We also need economists to tell the value of the wetlands in money terms so that they can persuade the governments and different stakeholders about the importance of the wetlands. We also need educators, people who work in media, communicators, to tell the general public or different stakeholders about the importance of protecting the wetlands, the flyways, and the water birds, which is relating to us. We need people who are doing good at IT, doing good at physics, like all sort of scientific research. We need innovative ideas to conserve our wetlands, to deal with for example, to deal with the invasion of the Spartina crabgrass. Or we need people with bright ideas of how to monitor the migration of the small birds, because we want to know where did they go so that we can identify the important wetlands. So all these talents from you guys, from different people with different backgrounds, are important for the conservation work. So no matter which subjects you are studying, there will be always a potential links between your field of study and the conservation of wetlands and migratory water birds. So if you have a chance to come to Korea, where our secretariat is based, you can join EAAFP as an internship. We are recruiting internship every 6 months. So yeah, please see when it's time for you to travel. We welcome you to join us. So that's the end of my presentation, and I know that you have some questions, and let me see if I can answer them all. Yeah, I have kind of sort out the questions according to the nature. So these two questions is basically about the management of the EAAFP. So one of them is asking, how does the management of discussions or cooperation of organization and governments interact with the management of projects aimed directly at helping the birds? And that is, what is it like organizing with so many countries? What measures are in place to easily make decisions and solve conflicts and disagreements? So these are good questions. So this is also related to how EAAFP works. I will try to answer that. Yeah. So for EAAFP, we have small secretariats, but how do we manage or maintain the discussion in cooperation with the other like different organization and government partners. So every 2 years, the EAAFP organize meeting of partners, which we call MOPs. At the MOPs, all the partners will come together and yeah, the organization and country partners, they can, as I said before, they can sit on the same level, same table to discuss on issues relating to the conservation of migratory water birds and wetlands. But there are different mechanisms that EAAFP can facilitate. So between governments, there may be bilateral agreements. So these are more of between the governments. And there are sister site agreements that I just mentioned. It's within the Flyway Site Network program. So this sister site agreement on the Flyway Network sites can help to bridge up countries together. We also have the task force and working groups that can include government, local NGOs, expertise, and NGOs, like all sorts of stakeholders to discuss on specific topics. Yeah, so in addition, there are some regional initiatives. For example, we have different initiatives by RAMSA. They are like according to regional initiative. We also have newly developed ASEAN Flyway initiatives, which is for Southeast Asian countries. So these are also within the governments that they would, after they join the RAMSA or ASEAN, the network, that they can form the initiative on that. Well, it is like true that with so many countries, especially so diverse, the language is already a barrier, and let alone the different culture in different countries. So this is not easy to come up with a compromise or agreeable aims. But however we did, we have launched the strategic plan, a 10-year strategic plan in our last MOP 2 years ago. Now that one is also agreed by all the partners. They're from governments or from the NGOs. So with these mechanism, I think it's still not easy ways to make decision to solve conflicts and disagreement. But the key thing is the communication between countries and among different sectors and agencies. The EAAFP is used as a platform to promote dialogues and promote and facilitate joint efforts. So yeah, that is the EAAFP work. We keep communicating, and with like continuous communication, then we will find ways to solve conflict. Because all in all, the partners who join EAAFP has the same goal, which are to conserve the migratory water birds and the wetlands, and like providing good livelihood for the people who rely on them. So yeah, for this same goal, I think people would find a solution. Yes. Okay. So the next group of question is mainly related to like how do we tackle the problem that we are voluntary partnership. Well, it's true. I agree that being voluntary and informal partnership, that may imply that conservation measure would not be taken into account or taken seriously, or maybe delayed because it is not legally binded. So it is not compulsory, especially for the government. But it's also, well, it's also challenge to EAAFP for how we could channel the conservation measure towards formal or legal binding mechanism. So that's why our intergovernment organization partners like RAMSA, CPD, the CNS, they're really important because those treaties are legally binding. And if they are our partners, that means we can also channel our partners towards these mechanisms which have more legal status than the agreement with like only with the EAAFP. So yeah, we are working between like working with the other partners which are from these conventions, and yeah, and the members countries that are conventions of this convention, they have to commit implementation of the nature conservation and wildlife protection. So yeah, hope this is one way that we use. But on the other hand, sometimes whether the governments or the agency are committed or not, it depends on the attitudes and how much the government is committed to that. And even sometimes it depends on whether our focal point or the person in charge on the issues is keen to bring this forward or not. And that's why we need to communicate a lot with them to bring up the issues, to raise their awareness, to make them feel like wetlands and migratory waterbirds are their priorities. So yes, but the beauty of the EAAFP, I think, is that it is because it's informal, so it's allowed the non-government, the NGOs to play a role to engage and collaborate with the government. And yeah, so if some of you study public administration, you may understand the procedure for making decision is like really long and taking time. But being informal, like it would allow an extent of flexibility and allow more stakeholders to engage. So this is one advantage. So we don't have one solution. We're human. So there must be a lot of different ways to solve a problem and to improve. Yeah. And then the question about conservation laws, especially for species that are migrate to different places, especially for terns, those that use open oceans like terns. So, well, this is a really difficult questions because let alone the law between countries, it can be difficult within one country. So I will, like especially seabirds, I will give you an example. So now I am based in the ROK, where the Secretariat of EAAFP locates. So here the Ministry of Environment takes care of all the birds issues, including terns. But since the terns, they breed on oceanic islands, and these islands, they were under the management of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. So now you can see the birds and lands, they are under two different government agencies. So who shall take the responsibility? And you can imagine what will happen, like, right? Back to the question. So well, we sometimes work on species level to solve problem. For example, we have Chinese crested tern, which is a tern species, and it's critically endangered. So for conserving this species, there are an international species action plan that was made and prepared by expertise and NGOs and governments, and was like released by the CMS, the convention. Well, it is important to include the scientific data and the legal status of these species in each range country, so that the legal status is kind of reflecting how much effort the government should put on to protect the species. And then the NGOs and the academic, they are important to initiate actions and to raise awareness to the relevant government agency and to urge conservation measures towards the targets, which is to protect the species. So sometimes working through species action plan, we can protect one species with dealing with different law system and also different countries. So yeah, that can be one way. And yeah, so I hope I can answer your questions. And then the last two, these are really hard question to me. Your site describe effort to better education, inform the public about migratory birds. Do these efforts have any appreciable effects? Uh, well, this is really hard question, so I will leave this to our audience to judge whether it is appreciable or not. But of course, there must be always ways to improve. And the following May, we are going to have the World Migratory Bird Day. This is also one important in global events that we raise the awareness about migratory birds. So I hope that you will join and you can see, hopefully you can see some tools or some production from the EAAFP. And so for the question with working through on a large scale project, have you seen problems or changes due to climate change? So now climate change is a very hot topic for everything. And working on wetlands, it's especially important. However, the climate change is a recent topic. It takes long time for monitoring. For migratory birds and birds in general, because they're very easy to observe. So I think it's relatively has an advantage to tell the trends of by the monitoring of of these birds, to tell the trend about the impact of climate change. But whether we have seen changes or problems, well, it needs to take it carefully because it can be a mixed impact from different threats like habitat loss, illegal hunting, or pollution, or human disturbance. All these will take into account, or maybe the climate change impacts is makes these impacts more exaggerated. So at this moment, I don't have a clear answer to that, but this is certainly something that the every flyways are now taking into account, and I hope that sometimes later that we can give a clear answer, or maybe you are the one who can help to answer all these questions. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. It takes quite a long time. I hope you enjoy, and if you want to know more about EAAFP, feel free to write to us. So, and yeah, enjoy your time, and I hope that the coronavirus situation will be under control very soon, and then you can all go back to school. So yeah, take care. Bye.